what I'd like to do now is hand you over to Martin, who I'm sure is going to wow you with some lighting techniques within Shaderlight.
Thanks very much, Nick, and I'd also like to welcome everybody to the webinars. Hopefully that we have a few people that have seen our earlier webinars. Now we're going to be looking sort of different style on this one. We're really going to be looking at those techniques and hopefully teach some of the things that people ask a lot regarding the lighting. Now we have just one question I would like to sort of mention. Is lighting important? Now, it's not a stupid question as it actually sounds. This is something that we do get asked an awful lot. And the answer is yes, because your eyes know what they want to see, and they will also know if something's wrong. So it's the lighting and the reflections of an object that will make your scene, ultimately real, and it will give you that differentiator between really, what you're going to achieve with the results. And hopefully we're going to look at those tools that can give you those and how you can get to these end results. So talking about the different lighting, now ultimately, the interior lighting options, you can create your daytime effect. You can create that effect so that it simply looks like we have a light coming through the window of this kitchen there. Or with the lighting options, nighttime. Simple switches, simple icons that we can just create this effect that we're after. So really those differences that can be achieved. And we're going to look at these as we go through. Now, one thing that is worth mentioning as we do go through these sort of different examples, that lighting really is something that's in Shaderlight Pro mainly. So we're going to be working in the Shaderlight Pro options. We can look at these as we go through. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's come out of that and we'll make a start.
Martin, can I interrupt you for a second? We've had a question come through. Somebody has asked, apart from lighting, what are the other differences between free and pro?
Okay, the major differences between free and pro, if I go into the Shaderlight render settings here, we've got the output resolution, and if you're using the free version, the output resolution is limited to 640 by 480. And you also haven't got the ability to change the custom above the 640 by 480 as well. Also, as we said, the lighting options, you're really only going to be able to use the SketchUp sunlight option there. And you can't change the background. That's something that you can't do in the free mode as well. Okay, so let's have a look just as we go through here. And I'm going to start Shaderlight rendering here. And we're just simply here, default material, and just using the Shaderlight background, sorry, the SketchUp background as well. So we can see using this, we just have the shadows, and if I go into the shadow settings in SketchUp, we've got the full control, and we can see what's happening here. And the shadows moving behind the sphere. And let's have a sort of look at what that's actually doing. So I'm going to go into the Shaderlight Material Editor here, and I'm just going to quickly select the material that's on this sphere, and I'm just going to make this a shiny material. And if I make this sort of one level below the mirror, so we can just look at the polished finish, we can see what's going on here. We can actually now see the SketchUp sun. Now this isn't quite a true representation of the SketchUp sun. It's because I'm on not quite a perfect polished finish. We can see the just the spread of this sun here. The SketchUp sun is just an infinitely small point of light that's sort of far away from your model. And this is why you get the hard shadows from this sun here. So if I now go to a mirror finish, now this looks even less exciting, and the reason for this is that the SketchUp environment we're inside a grey, just a plain grey environment. It's like the floor but all the way round. The sky in SketchUp isn't actually a reflective option there. So starting to sort of look at the differences, and we can go into our Shaderlight render settings here. So I'm going to turn on the physical sky option, and we're going to notice the change quite quickly. And we can now see that using the physical sky, what we've done is we've actually created now a physical environment that we're now inside. So we've got this sky, and we can see our sun. You know, our sun actually has a given size to it, and you can start seeing the softer edges. Now, also, if I start changing the times here, you know, we can see the shadow changing. The shadow starts getting longer. So if we put it in sort of an evening time, we can also see the colors are changing. So we're starting to get that sunset effect. The shadows are really sort of getting that sort of sunset effect now, and very soft around the end there. So we're creating this physical sky for the correct times of day, but it is also affecting the color and the feel to the actual scene. So it's not only the reflection that we're seeing, it is also affecting the shadows and the color. Now, it's not sort of so obvious using the mirror there, but you know, if I just quickly change that back to sort of less shiny, you know, now we're getting that orange color. We can really see that orange color from that evening time. And we just quickly change that. There we go. We get the sort of the blue effect. So using the physical sky system in the Shaderlight render settings, to be honest, if you're looking at sort of a quick render, change to that first of all. Pretty much sort of straight away, just go to sort of a physical sky. Okay, so we're going to look at the other lighting options in here as well. So I'm going to go back to a mirror because I want to see what's actually going on with some of these other ones as well. So under the physical sky option here, we've got artificial lights only, and we're going to look at artificial lights later on in the webinar. But we've also got these options here: meeting room, London morning, business park daytime, and golf course evening. Now, popular question is what these actually are and what these are referencing. Now, the references of these are actually image-based lighting, so they are environments that have been taken using a special camera. So what I can do, I'm actually going to have a look at one of these HDR images, and this is the business park daytime. So I'm looking at this in some special software here, and I can actually look round, and this is a 360-degree image, and it's also top to bottom as well, and this is designed to fit inside the sphere. Now, what's also particularly special about these HDR images is that the image-based lighting as well it contains the lighting information. So we've got sort of that lens line there where the sun has hit the lens, and I can actually turn down the exposure of this image, and we can start seeing sort of the where the planes have been in the sky, and we can now see the sun in this image. So not only is it sort of a 360-degree image, it contains the lighting information at the multiple exposures as well. So you've got full control over this this HDR image.
Martin, we've had another couple of questions come through. I wonder if you can just answer those quickly. Firstly, is Shaderlight multi-threaded?
Yeah, Shaderlight is multi-threaded, and also it will work on 32-bit and 64-bit. Now, you don't have to worry about which one you download or the installation. This will just work. So, you know, it will know if you have a 64-bit machine, and it will utilize what you have in a 64-bit machine. So if you have more than 4 gig of RAM, it will help your rendering. You know, with the multi-threading, of course, that will help your rendering a lot as well.
The other question is, what spec machine are you using for this demonstration?
Okay, the machine that I'm using here, it is a sort of a quad-core CPU, and I have 8 gig of RAM, Windows 7, 64-bit. So I am using the 64-bit machine here as well. The minimum spec is 2 gig of RAM, and it will run with the 32 gig sorry, 32-bit Windows systems there. You know, obviously you will see differences in performance. But you know, we have created sort of different ways of rendering, and we can look at those on different ones as well. Okay, so I'm now going to change my lighting because we saw the business park daytime. So if I go to our business park daytime lighting environment here, we've got this image-based lighting, and we can see that building that was in our scene, and at the moment the sun is behind this sphere. So if I just spin this round, now we're reflecting the sun in the sphere, and the shadows actually following the sun there, and we get the softer shadows depending on the type of environment we're in. So if I choose like the golf course evening, you know, this was a sort of a much softer shadows, and we can see we get the softer shadows there. It was very like an evening sun, and we can see our golf course environment there. Okay.
Right, Martin, can you use custom HDR files from Google Earth?
Now, Google Earth, unless I'm mistaken on Google Earth, you can get the JPEGs from Google Earth, but I will look up on that one. We do have your details of the person that asked that question, so we will try and find that one out. Sorry, I can't answer that one sort of directly. Okay, so the business park daytime, we've got our environment here. Now, not only I've talked about lighting obviously a lot, and we get the shadows there, but it is the reflections as well. So if I just open up another scene here, and I'm just going to open up an office building, and you know, using the HDRs and the lighting environments in sort of this type of scene as well, you know, we've got a lot of glass on the front of our scene here, and we're reflecting those trees from the environment. So it's those sort of things that on a building, a car, or an object, it's getting those reflections as well that give it, you know, your mind what it's looking for. And I'm using a photo here in the background, and this was taken at the same time as we took the 360-degree image. So this will match. So this building on the side here, this is actually in the HDR, and what I can do, if we rotate that round, we can see the reflections rotating round there. And somewhere in this 360-degree, there we go, there's that building that's in this photo here. But obviously now in the wrong position because we've now rotated that round. But you rotate that round to match the shadows to your photo, so you get that identical, so you get that set up. So really the external lighting options, you know, you can see very quickly. You can use sort of the physical sky and the different image-based lighting options as well. And you know, other sort of HDRs are available from companies such as Moof, and there are some others on the web that you can find, and these can be used if you choose a custom environment option there as well. So that's really sort of looking at the external side of things. So let's take things inside now. So I'm just going to open again, sort of a simple scene here, and this is something we get asked a lot on support, and it appears on our forums as well. You know, people create an interior scene like this. I'll just you know, show you around to prove there's nothing sort of too sort of complicated going on here. This literally is just a box with a window with a sphere in it, and you know, so they go inside, hit render, and immediately we get these results. And this does, like I said, this does appear on the forums. You know, people turn around and say, oh, you know, what's happening with my internal lighting? Now, the simple response to this is actually expected behavior, and this is what you would see, you know, using the sort of just the default lighting here. And the reason for this is that you know, sunlight in a real-world environment, the sun doesn't rely on processor power to actually produce the light. So with a computer, we create you know, a certain amount of light that's coming in from you know, our environment outside, and only a certain amount is getting in through the window. So you know, each one of these sort of speckles, the noise, that is just a light particle. So in the black areas, there's not any light hitting there. So the reason for this is there's not enough light entering the room. So this is something we need, you know, to sort of use some of our techniques and the abilities that we have in Shaderlight. And I'm going to open the Shaderlight light editor. And these are the different lighting options that we get in here. We can see we get point light, spotlight, IES lights, area lights, and a skylight portal. And we're going to look at all of these as we go through. But for an interior scene, an interior daytime scene, you really need a skylight portal. Now, the skylight portal will seal this window, and it's basically a one-way system for light energy. So if I seal this window with a skylight portal, I'll just do that now, and simply like drawing a rectangle, this will block off the window, and it will give the light energy, just pretty much saying, right guys, come on in here, but you're not getting out. So we can see we've now got much more sort of the softer light. We haven't got that noise. We've got the light coming in. We've got the sun coming in from the SketchUp sunlight. Now, if I change the lighting environment, and if I change to the physical sky, which we've mentioned before, you know, we pick up those colors. We pick up the colors and the soft shadows from the physical sky as well. And you know, in the SketchUp shadow settings, if I change the time of day, that's not a problem. You know, that just moves around. We get the bluer colors, or we can get the morning colors as well. So we can really sort of have full control over that as well. But also, we've still got this black wall here, and behind the sphere, it's completely black. Now the reason for this is the light energy is coming into the room, and where it hits, it stops. Now, this is because we've got the exterior option set in our Shaderlight render settings, and I want to set this to be an interior, and this turns on global illumination. Now, global illumination means the light energy will come in the room and then basically bounce around. And you know, depending on the quality slider where you have it set, that will give a different number of bounces. So the light is now coming in the room, hitting the red wall, and it's actually hitting the back of the sphere now. And it's also, you know, we can certainly see sort of more red on this side of the room, and this wall is now lit. So it's completely sort of indirect lighting, but it's bouncing off the walls and hitting the walls and around the back of the objects.
Martin, can you angle the window skylight portal?
Yes, there is a technique to do that. At the moment, it would be to, if you create a plane at the angle that you want in SketchUp, you can then attach the plane. There are different techniques that you can use. They're not ideal really with sort of the SketchUp selection options that we have. What I would recommend with that one is if you contact support@artvps.com, we can give you a work through. So you know, we can show you how to do that. There are techniques. They're not ideal, but there are techniques available to do that. Okay, so as we can see, we've got our interior with our global illumination. So really, we can see, you know, going from sort of the kitchen scene that we sort of showed back earlier, really that was set up simply with the skylight portal, and then we turn on global illumination. And that's really how that scene was set up. You know, it's a good model, so that certainly does help with the rendering. And you know, that was supplied to us from Go to School, so a SketchUp training company that you know, we've been talking to, that really sort of beginning to you know, they're liking Shaderlight a lot as well. So from their sort of current renderers. Okay, so let's now have a look at sort of going inside here. Okay, so I'm opening up a sort of simple office interior here, and we'll soon see, when the scene opens, that we've got sort of different lights that we can attach to here. And this really, we're going to be looking at a nighttime scene. So if I just render this, and pretty much all we've got at the moment is, obviously, we can see what's outside the window. And there is a sort of slight blue light inside the room. Now, a technique that that we have, and something that we have in Shaderlight render settings, is an auto exposure option. Now, the auto exposure is a lot like on your digital camera. If you were in a dark environment and you take a photo with your digital camera, it will often hold the shutter open for longer to try and capture more light. The digital camera is set up to take a photo of a daytime, and it will always try and create that. And Shaderlight is actually the same. And if you have auto exposure turned on, now if I turn it on now, I've got +9, so I've increased my exposure as well. It brightens the image up, it tries to create that daytime image. Now, the auto exposure, and this is something that we do mention in our online manual, and I'd highly recommend looking at that in the resources section of our website. The auto exposure is very useful because creating that daytime environment, but it does also create some behavior that we do get asked a lot. Particularly if you put a light into a scene on a sunny day, people say, well, why can't I see the light? And the reason for that is that it's like looking at a light bulb in the middle of a sunny field. You wouldn't actually see the light coming from it. So that's the reason why you're getting that. But also, if you want to create a dark room and then you want to put the lights in the room like we're going to at the moment, you might want to turn auto exposure off, because if you put a small light into a room, the auto exposure will immediately try and brighten it up to be like a daytime environment. Now we can look at this, and as we start to put lights in the room. So we've seen the skylight portal. So I'm going to select the point light here. Now the point light is a point of light that shines light in all directions. So this is very good to sort of create like a light bulb. So I'm just going to put this on the bottom of this light fixture in the ceiling here, and we can now see that has sort of lit the room. And the shadows that's being cast here, this is actually coming from that geometry. So I'm just going to move that down a little bit so that that removes that shadow. Now in my render here, it's very bright. Now the light that I've put in here is 125 candela. Now as a good reference, 125 candela is the equivalent of a 100-watt light bulb, a bare 100-watt light bulb. So it would be pretty bright in the room. So I can just turn this down here and we can have a darker light in the room. And what I'm going to do, with a darker light, you generally don't get the pure white image. So just going to give that a slight yellowness to it.
And one of the questions we just had come in, Martin, was how do I make a soft glow come from a lampshade? Is that something you can show in a little while, or?
Yeah, sure. We'll sort of look at sort of the different lights as we come through as well.
Cool.
Okay, so I've just put that point light in the ceiling there. So let's if we go back to our desk. Again, we can see the hard shadows here, the pure black. The light is coming from that ceiling light, and it's not bouncing, it's being stopped by the table. Now, something I've just thought of while I'm here, just a little useful tip. If I right-click on the lighting icon, this is just a component within SketchUp, and if I go into the entity info, I can actually say I don't want that light to cast shadows. And if we now go back down to the desk, there we go. Now we've got no shadows. So you can create sort of like an ambient light, and that can be useful if you turn that sort of down low. Just a different technique that you sort of can use. But I'm going to have the shadows on here. Ultimately you want to sort of create a realistic scene on this one. Okay, so let's have a look at the light that we've got on the desk here. So just got this this downlighter here, and I've just downloaded this from the 3D warehouse. And in here, if I go back into our light editor, now I'm going to use a spotlight for this one. Now with a spotlight, unlike the point light which shines light in all directions, the spotlight you actually control which direction the light is facing. So with my first click, this chooses the position of the light. And then, as you can see, I can move my mouse around and we can actually create a searchlight effect. And then with a second click, it places the light. So it can be sometimes easier. And you can see I've just I've put a light line into my scene here. And I just want that attached to that line so that that's pointing downwards. And I'm going to change the angle. And we'll say that's 100 degrees. And we'll see that update. And this will actually update the component as well. So, you know, SketchUp is just updating my component, and we've got the angle there. And I want this slightly brighter. So I'm just going to brighten that image up. And we can make this one slightly whiter as well. So we just get that light on the table. Okay, so we've now got our point light in our scene and our spotlight as well. So we can see that on the table. And the next option I'm going to look at is the IES web profile light. Now this is a scary sounding light, but it's actually a very useful light. Now an IES profile is the profile a manufacturer creates to imitate their lights in a renderer. So using the IES profile, which you can download free from a lot of manufacturers such as Philips, you can put real-life lights in here. Now I've just sort of done a simple render here, and these are all different IES lights that have come from different manufacturers. And you can see the different styles of lights that we're actually getting sort of coming from these different files. So sort of a soft spotlight compared to sort of a wall lighter, and you know, quite a spread on the lights. So the IES web profiles you can download for free, and you know, you can really sort of work on this. So on the top of our painting here, we've just got these downlighters, and these are actually components. So I'm just going to edit one of the components. And I'm going to come into my light editor here, and I'm going to put in an IES profile. Now an IES profile is also directional, so you know, I want to put one of these in here, just sort of similar how we created our sort of light earlier. Okay, now I didn't quite catch the line that I was working on there. So it's nice and simple. Using the move, we can really just fine-tune the placement of that light exactly where we want it. There we go, just using the SketchUp systems. And if I come out here, at the moment this light is very, very bright. We can see it sort of lit up the room quite a lot. So I'm going to turn down the percentage of that light. And I'm also going to choose a different file. So I've got some IES files that I've downloaded from Philips here, and we can see that they're very small files. So if I just choose this this different light that's on the sort of the manufacturer's code there, we can actually see different lights that we're getting there. Okay, and because I've edited in the component, it's attached them to all three there. Okay, so we've got the lights coming from the downlighter there. Right, so just the last light that we haven't looked at here is an area light. Now I want some light to come off my computer screen here. I want to make it look like my computer screen is on. Now to sort of really help with this, I'm actually going to remove my light in the room, so we've just got the lighting on the desk. So you know, this will really show up the effect. And we can see that sort of with your interactive updates there. So I want my screen to show up. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select the material that's on the screen here, and we can see I've actually just got a Shaderlight screenshot of the room that we're actually in. And I'm going to go into my lighting editor, and in here we've got self-illuminating material. So self-illuminating material will make it look like this material is lit. So with regards to the question earlier, looking like a lampshade or something like that, you can create that lampshade to look lit, and we have sort of the different values here. So we can control the brightness of our screen there. So it now looks like our screen is actually on. Now self-illuminating materials don't cast light, so this just has that lighting effect on it. So I'm going to go into my light editor, and I'm going to use the area light. Don't want the skylight portal again, just at the moment. And I'm going to just put this on the screen here. Now, something that I don't know if sort of the more eagle-eyed people watching, if you go from right to left, you get the orange line will face towards you. If you go from left to right, the orange line will face away from you. So these lights are directional. So I want the light facing into the room. So we've now got that area light on the desk there, and just going to turn the value down because I just want a little bit of light onto the desk. And what I can also do then is just make that sort of the color of a monitor, so just give that sort of a slightly bluer light coming from the monitor. Okay, so I'm happier with my light there. So we've now got that light, we're casting the light from the monitor, and we can see that reflecting in our table there. So, I'm pretty happy with the scene. We've used all of our different lights. I've removed my point light, but we've still said about like the black shadows. And what I need to do in here is turn on my interior global illumination. Now, global illumination does take a little bit of more working out because the light is then bouncing around the room. So I'm also just going to turn up the resolution here as well. And you can see this is updating sort of in my SketchUp render window. And if I just choose that and select sort of full screen, we're currently looking at it 45%. Using the zoom here, we can sort of zoom out of there, and let's just get a slightly better view from the window. Let's get a little bit more of the desk. We really want to see, get an idea of that light. Okay, and if we view that sort of 100% full screen, we can really we get that light going underneath here. We can see the light coming from the spotlight around the back of the table there. So we've got, the interactivity and our lighting options there. And so we can leave that to it. Okay, so we've looked around at the different lights, and hopefully, you've seen some different lighting techniques that that you can use, sort of working with Shaderlight. So I know there's a few sort of questions come in, and we can certainly keep them coming in. And but that's the end of the webinar here.
One of the questions that we have had come in, Martin, which is a bit of a tricky one actually, because we certainly don't want to be seen as trashing the competition. But perhaps the question that's come in is, how do we compare to Podium? Perhaps you can share with people the feedback that we've had from our customers on how we compare with Podium.
Sure. The the major difference is that we certainly that we have the interactive updates. You can see it was very easy to set up the scene while I was actually working and while I was going through. So the interactive updates is sort of a major part there. And again, going from sort of customer comments, really it's the simplicity. You put a light into the scene, it does what you want it to, and it's just setting up those scenes and some of the flexibility and also the material editors as well. It's there are differences there, but yeah, we've had positive feedback from customers that have come to us. So.
Another question come in here, Martin. I would like to get faster renders. I'm looking at building a PC for 3D animation. What is most important? RAM, processor, video card, or a combination of all?
Okay. Now, with regards to the rendering side of things, with 64-bit, 64-bit will enable you to use more RAM. So the more RAM you have, you will get better performance out of rendering. Then the faster the CPU you have, and particularly with multi-cores, this will then be able to use the RAM a lot more efficiently. So, it really is a combination of the two. If you put in as much RAM as you want, but sit on a very slow processor, then you're really not going to be achieving the benefits. Graphics cards will assist certainly with the SketchUp window, but Shaderlight doesn't utilize the graphics card. You'll get better performance from SketchUp, but rendering wise, really with regards to rendering, you need to be able to fit the whole scene onto your graphics card. Otherwise the graphics card isn't going to actually benefit you that much. So we look at the RAM side of things because you have those, you can really sort of put the RAM up on your machine.
IES lights also contain the appropriate light intensity value of a light fixture from the manufacturer. The person who was asking the question was wondering if IES lights can be used, then be used as with real world light intensity values, which can then be properly exposed using physical camera setting within a rendering program. Does Shaderlight have that?
As you mentioned, yes, the IES lights do contain the real life values. You've seen that the values that we have in the Shaderlight render settings. We don't have the ability to sort of set those to, to say this is ultimately what it's going to look like in real life. I know what you're asking for. Some high-end packages, they do give the ability to actually give lighting values in certain areas, but it's something that we don't have. But ultimately the IES lights, they are the real profiles with the global illumination. You do get sort of that real life finish.
Is there a way to darken the shadows when using IBL lighting?
This is actually a limitation in IBL lighting, and it's purely because the sun, as I mentioned right at the beginning, the sun in SketchUp is an infinitely small point of light, whereas on an IBL the sun is a given size, so it does sort of spread the light. So the shadows intensity can be a little bit lighter. But this is something we are looking at, different techniques of how we can actually sort of change different ways of working with IBL, and we've got a good team of guys here, so sort of confident we'll see something on that.
If the model has a much higher polygon count, more detailed modeling geometry in the room, would it take longer to render using lighting interiors?
The simple answer to that is yes, purely because the light has to work out the number of faces, how it is sitting, how it's reflecting. The larger the scene, yes, will extend your render times.
Well, I think that's questions. I haven't got any more coming through at the moment. Oh, looks like we've got one more coming through. Oh, now there's loads of questions coming through. What we'll do is we'll carry on for another 5 minutes and try and get through as many questions as possible. If your question isn't answered, then please feel free to either email support@artbps.com, and that's probably the best way to get your support questions. Or, of course, you can post your questions on the forum. That way, everybody will be able to see those answers coming back. Here we go, Martin. Here's one more. If you find that a rendered scene is a little dark, does Shaderlight have a post-process color mapping exposure adjustment?
Okay. Now, with regards to the exposure, now I did say that I've turned off the auto exposure, but the exposure settings, because the way we work, this can actually be adjusted in real time without having to re-render. So we can see that there. Now, all right, I've gone the other way. The question was if it was too dark. All right, if I tap in a number there, ooh, that'll be very bright. If I tap in there we go. So I'm not re-rendering. You can still see that sitting, working away at sort of the numbers there. So simple answer is sort of yes on that one. That can be fine-tuned just using the exposure control there.
Now, we've got somebody here who has light leaking in sometimes. Any ideas why they might get that?
Light leakage is actually due to the SketchUp geometry. And you get this from particularly where two faces are meeting. In SketchUp, they don't always meet perfectly. And with Shaderlight, ultimately, the SketchUp can get through. Now, if I go back to my room interior, the scene with the sphere in. Now, the simple way around this is to actually sort of ultimately give you all sort of double thickness. So you can see on my walls here, I've actually got a thickness given to my walls, and that will actually stop the light leakage.
Does the IES data become embedded in the file?
No, if you copy the file across to somebody else, you would need to take the IIS profile, send that as well.
A question here that I can probably answer. Are you working on the next version of Shaderlight, and what will be better or new? Yes, indeed, we are working on the next version of Shaderlight. As to what changes and additional features will be in there, at the moment, that's not something that we can release. But rest assured that new version will happen later on this year, and as soon as we can release details on that, we will do. Martin, any thoughts about night outdoor landscaping around pools? Probably plenty of ideas.
Yeah, it looks great. Okay, now what I would recommend on this one is that on YouTube we do have a channel, a Shaderlight channel on there, and one of our previous webinars actually does contain lighting around a swimming pool, and you'll see the bump maps on there, how that works with the lighting, also the environment as well, different techniques of the environment. That's on one of our previous webinars. Like I said, if you have a look on YouTube, and you'll see our videos there. I think it's about a 40-minute video. It's one of our longer videos on YouTube.
Question has come through here, and is there a simple technique to get general illumination in a room? I'm guessing some of the stuff that you've shown us today is the simple way of doing that, Martin. I don't know if the question has come from somebody who stepped in a little late or not.
General illumination in a room, if what I'm thinking, perhaps like sort of ambient light, so you get sort of a background glow. The option, as I mentioned on that, was in the point light. If you put a point light in the middle of the room, make it very low, right click on that point light, and then you can turn off the shadows. So yeah, I'm in a different scene at the moment, but yeah, that would be the option I would use. I know we ran through that quite quickly. If there's any part of that, please email support or on the forums.